Hi, welcome to the Midnight Hymn Podcast. I'm Josh Foreman. With me, we've got Eric and Ryan, and we're going to dive right into the song real fast this time. This is, for reference, for context, this is the follow-up to the last episode we did. This song is a coupling with that one. So if you want to really follow along, you should make sure you watch that previous episode, which was number 3, I believe. All right, let's get into it now.
Kiss the image in a stranger's casket. What has become of their splendor? 12 strokes have fallen, faintly heard breath that argue
Cool. There it was. Wow. So there's two parts to that. There's the intro, which is kind of an extended guitar solo-ish kind of moment. Eric, what are your thoughts on that as a person who guitars from time to time?
It's really cool. There's many parts, and I guess both parts of the song that remind me of kind of like 80s guitar guitar melodies and lines. There's some cool guitar tapping that goes on in there. I just like that it's kind of over like this pensive, thoughtful melody right off the bat, like it's showing the person kind of like deep in thought.
Yeah, there's a
Cool
lot of
guitar
mode
solo.
shifts that happen during this song. But it seems like tempo, mood, instrumentality, etc. So I'm going to talk about this song as including both parts 1 and 2, just because it's going to get too complicated to keep breaking them apart. But
That makes sense.
Yeah, because I feel like there's 5 or 6 really distinct mood shifts throughout this. What about you, Ryan? What were your thoughts?
I've always been curious as to why do they split it out into a part 1 and part 2? Like what purpose did that serve from a intentionality perspective? I do think part 1 is quite interesting. Like you said, Eric, it's mysterious. It kind of gets you in at least me, it gets me in a contemplative posture. And then the only words are, I saw a tattered cloak drawn about the face, a gesture of farewell to the kiss of God's mouth. And then it transitioned into part 2, which has got that sort of radiant intro. That borders on joyous almost. And so it's like if you were to graph this song, as far as what's happening, it's all sorts of, valleys and peaks. And, it's a bit of a descent from where it starts. So it seems like you're more going into a valley. I'll pause there.
It's a good way of describing it, valley.
Yeah, and when you take this together with the previous song, the idea of this journey, and we keep describing it this way as though there is spatial movement, and I don't know if that's necessarily implied here, but there is some kind of movement implied. Do we all agree with that? Like whether it's
What do you mean by that? Like, help me understand that.
well, okay, so I mean, when you make a metaphor like the valley of the shadow of death, right? That is implying a topological, like there is a high, there is a low, and you're traveling from one to the other. And I think a lot of that sort of is being evoked through these. And I don't even know that I could point to a particular place. I wonder if it's just the music that's making me feel this motion that I like psychologically map onto a spatial journey, right? And I'm just curious if other people are experiencing that.
Yeah, I mean, a good way of describing music is kind of like, instead of painting visually, you're painting with time. You're using notes over a span of time so that can give the feeling of movement. And of course, there's a big shift between part 1 and part 2, and then several shifts in between there musically in terms of mood, like you were saying earlier. So that really helps to add to that feeling of moving forward and moving through different emotions at different times, especially in this, which seems to kind of center around the question of death and how that deals with the divine, and thoughts on that.
What's interesting is there's like 2 descents. The first descent, I mean, the name is In the Kiss of God's Mouth. And so there's that guitar at the very beginning of part 2. Dun, 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 dun. And that musically represents sort of someone descending into the presence of the protagonist. One might say that someone is a personification of God. And that hypothesis is sort of backed by, if you go to the Requiem Mezzo Forte album, and if you listen to the song And I Am Suffering, it's 10 minutes and 55 seconds. Well, at the 10:27 mark, as that song is ending, they have the exact same guitar, dun, 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 but it's sped up. It's slightly faster. And that phase of that song is another bizarre, like different type of music compared to the rest of the song. And it's this ushering in, this, in my mind, a descent for the arrival of something. And the song that follows that one is called Domine, which is the word for God. And so there seems to be this fragrant descent that's coming down. And then to the point we made earlier, Josh, there's the human that's the protagonist, and they experience a descent into darkness almost. So that was long-winded, but just some initial thoughts.
Yeah. You use the word protagonist, and my mind always goes there as an author. I'm always kind of thinking in these terms. But one of the things as I was like really thinking about many of the words boy, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like the lyrics are playing with who or what a protagonist is, right? The first word in here is I saw a tattered cloak. But then you've got a ruined soul. Like, is that am I the ruined soul, or is it referring to someone else or something else? Going back to Velvet Tongue, there's also a lot of playing around. It's my friends, and then are you holding on? So as though sort of speaking to the listener. So I just think it's interesting that, to me, you can't really nail down like a character, a protagonist is doing, X, Y, and Z. It's really just dipping into these thematic waters. And I think maybe that's what makes it poetic and resonant and universal, is because there is no like very specified set of operations going on here. If that's maybe an over clinical way to put it, but yeah, that's how my brain works.
Yeah.
Well, they're a big fan of, dark and mysterious, not only sounding songs, but also lyrics. So, I mean, there's an element of kind of that cryptic, hard to discern nature. Who is who? Like you said, protagonist. It kind of loops into that. And as far as I can tell, most of the songs in E minor, which kind of adds to kind of like a haunting feeling and can kind of be associated with feelings of grief or a sense of restlessness. So,
Yeah,
where you project yourself as a character in that narrative kind of feeds into the feelings of that song.
I was going to say you helped me discover that my favorite genre is indeed E minor.
Is that you're finding a lot of things in E minor?
Put that in any song, be it a Christmas song or a country song or a polka song. I will like it if it's in E minor, I think. So
We're all attracted to certain keys.
Yeah.
I've
What do you
written a
guys
few
think
in-
of that? I saw a tattered cloak, drawn about the face, gesture of farewell. That's just a bizarre statement. I have my own personal application of that, but how do you guys even unpack that?
So the first thing that springs to mind for me with that is the separation of man from God. I think of the Garden of Eden, and like skins are made of animals to cover their shame, and they're sent away from God. Again, getting back to that sort of mythopoetic journey, away from God and then back to God. And this seems to me like where we left off before was we stand, like we're holding on. There's something here worth holding on to. And now it's like, okay, leaving again to eventually come back. That's where I go.
Yeah. Eric, you got any thoughts on that? Or?
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting interpretation of that. I think I was thinking of it more I don't know, literally not the right word, but like talking about really dealing with someone's death, and it's drawn across face, and whether this is a person they knew very well or not, like someone they had some sort of connection to. But that could also be more metaphorical, like someone they knew before. You were talking about like the fall of man, like a past self and this self, and how that relates to one's relationship to the divine, or I mean there's a lot of different ways you could go with that.
I apply that to your point earlier, Josh. I think the previous song is more communal. There's There's a, shared group of people who have experienced adversity at the hands of, sort of religious abusers. This song transitions from the communal to the personal. I, me. There is a stranger in there, and we'll need to explore who or what that stranger is. But yeah, I saw a tattered cloak. What's interesting is it's almost like I see the album from right to left rather than left to right. In other words, as you work your way left, if you start from Our Wings Are Burning, this part one makes more sense. Like, you experience something and then you're saying farewell and you're working your way out versus, I saw a tattered cloak, a gesture of farewell, and then you transition into this experience, which presumably is the kiss of God's mouth. And it's like, well, I just said farewell and I was leaving. Anyway, that was a thought I had. And then the other is like this assassin or ninja that's cloaking themselves, that's going stealth. And, for me, I apply that with my, my own faith journey. Like, I don't advertise myself anymore like I did in my 20s as this sort of social warrior that's trying to proclaim, the gospel or anything like that. It's very personal to me. I would call it like a cloaked, conspicuous, Christian that's embedded in society, but not at all your prototypical, nationalist or somebody who's trying to, persuade somebody else to adopt their way of thinking.
Yeah. So the cloak as a sort of disguise or covering that hides something underneath. And I mean, there's a variety of reasons to hide things.
Kiss the image in a stranger's casket. What has become of their splendor? 12 strokes of falling.
I would like to talk about kissing the image on a stranger's casket. What the hell does that mean?
Yeah, that one's tough.
I think about okay. You start at the beginning. What is visually represented here? So a casket at a funeral. I think about kissing the image. Is the image their mortal remains? Is it literally like a picture of them? But when you start from the what, then you can kind of like derive different whys from it. I think as far as like, why is this being evoked and how is this informing the rest of the music and the words? And so I just think about this very, the mood, right, is instantly shifted down here, right? It goes from this kind of like, upbeat is not the right word, but there's something going on in this first movement that is suddenly like downshifted here, and it has something to do with again I go back to that Eden myth of like what has become of the splendor. Like there was something holy and beautiful that existed and no longer does, whether it's a corpse in a box or our fall from grace or whatever that may be. So that's where my mind goes with it.
Yeah, it seems to be like a lament. There's some kind of internal beauty that's been marred and, it has been lost. It's definitely sad in my mind. Eric, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I tie it back to the previous verse. I mean, I think of maybe like the tattered cloak. I mean, you can take that metaphor different ways, but it could be like a clouding of awareness, like not seeing something clearly that you did before. And then I guess that kind of relates to what Josh was saying about the fall of man, which can be also very metaphorical if you're going the more like, I guess, Gnostic way or mystical way. Yeah, I mean, you're losing a previous splendor, a previous life that was, maybe better, and if your awareness is clouded because a cloak's been drawn across you, you can no longer see that. So maybe it's kind of like saying goodbye to a past self or a past life in a sense.
I think the stranger is the protagonist, and it's a protagonist that is so unraveled in their identity that they're a stranger to themselves, and then eventually they're longing for their beauty to be known, to be objectified by someone that's descended that is the dispenser of beauty or the creator of beauty. I don't know. That's just some thoughts.
I really like that. Because the following lines, they go, 12 strokes have fallen and the faintly heard breath that argued my beauty. I think the 12 strokes being, the of a clock. You hit midnight, your life is over, right? You had your time. Your time is now over. The faintly heard breath that argued my beauty. So in your interpretation, then that would be like, your previous sort of mode of existence or interpretive framework for reality was kind of giving you your I keep wanting to use this word and I keep trying to resist it, but I think of like self-confidence, right? But I think that's just a dumb reductive word for this. Like, what does it mean to have your beauty argued for you? Because there are people that have zero problem with self-confidence, and there are other people who just are an endless void of, they require continual reassurance, right, that they are worth something. And so those things can be very different things to those two different kind of people, right, on that spectrum. So
yeah, I guess like whether other people recognize the good in you, or I don't know. Beauty could be perceived many different ways, just outward beauty or just, an internal thing. But yeah, whether it's argued for you, I guess, how well it's recognized in others.
Yeah,
people recognize it in you.
I would see it really generally as just worth, like self-worth. Am I worth anything? And do I have value? The word splendor is used before. And so there are people that derive these sustaining self-image thoughts from a God. God made me special, and that's why I'm important. And when you're saying farewell to the kiss of God's mouth, are you cutting yourself off from that and then saying, well, what else sustains my worth? I think that's a way to approach that.
There's definitely an abandonment that is experienced in my mind. As you sort of work your way through the album, this notion of all is dark, all but an upturned face. The following song is also linked with, it's called Renaissance, and it starts out, and I looked to the air and the breeze was not cold. I sought for your hand to hold on to me. So Velvet Tongue and The Kiss and then Renaissance, they all have this theme of, lying like in the grass, looking up at the sky in a cold breeze and having some sort of, mental and existential experience.
Spatially into the next the region of the song, a ruined soul bewailing. This is where things get so chills up the spine, like musically and vocally and lyrically. It's just, man, it's so bitter and delicious at the same time. Can't describe it, but
dude, it's awesome. I love this section, man. Oh, the angels allowing their wings be wilted, the notion of a friend. Oh, it's freaking fantastic.
Yeah, what does it mean? So I was thinking of these wings be wilted to droop and to bow on the bosom of a friend. And what are wings typically symbolic of? Typically freedom, right? That's what I think of them. And so here their wings are not being used for their own freedom. They're used to do something else that is inverse to that, which makes to me, it seems like a bigger sacrifice. You know what I mean? Like, you should be flying free, but instead you're spending time doing this, which is then resonates with the idea of like being kissed by God. Like, so, what do you guys think of wings and kisses?
Yeah, it's like I don't know, angels, or what angels are. I mean, can be defined in so many different ways, but like the higher beings are kind of like taking pity on this person in a sense and trying to, empathize with their struggle or their, transformation in this sense. Whether they're mourning their past self and trying to reach out to the divine again, establish a relationship again, some sort of connection, or if they're just trying to, I don't know, find themselves again, the angels feel for them.
Yeah, the angels in Virgin Black music, if you look at Whispered of Dead Sisters, the angels are forlorn. They just seem to share in the sorrow of the individual. It's like a spiritual salve or ointment that, just when somebody's at the point of wanting to give up, the angels sort of arrive. And in this case, the drooping wings, to me, they represent like protection, warmth, comfort. Certainly not flying. They just, they're drooped and enveloping the individual. I love it.
Yeah, I also
like
want
that
to
interpretation.
provide an alternative interpretation of angels simply as people who are expressing Christ-like or godly attributes in your life. Like, I think
Sure.
we are angels to each other all the time, especially, the last word of that phrase being friend, like the bosom of a friend. Like, am I friends with some celestial being? I don't think so. I don't feel that, but I do feel friendship with people that I share physical space with and that impact my life, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's another way.
Yeah, that's great. I like it. It gets it out of the, ethereal and esoteric into concrete existence, so that's good.
Yeah. This next one line that has two very interesting ideas. So, kiss me tenderly, savage God. What is going on there? Why is God savage?
Dude, I don't know.
Because he's just gone through this whole dark ordeal, Again, it's so cryptic. It's hard to like pull apart entirely. But whether it's dealing with death physically or metaphorically, like he's almost like it's almost like tongue in cheek, I guess. Like, oh, you're so savage, God, but they still want this, I don't know, connection with the divine. So I guess it depends on like how you interpret the kiss. Like, is it like a petition for death physically or metaphorically, or a petition? I thought of like a petition of understanding, like help me connect with you to like understand this phase of my life more. So like, I don't know, a kiss is, it's a very passionate and connecting force.
Yeah.
So
It reminds me of Lamentations 3 in the Old Testament. The Jerusalem had just been destroyed, and there's this chapter 3 that most people may not know about, but it's potent. And it starts off with, I'm a man who has seen affliction by the rod of the Lord's wrath, blah, blah, blah. He's made my skin and my flesh grow old and has broken my bones. So this protagonist is describing this experience of Yahweh, like a bear lying in wait, like a lion in hiding. He dragged me from the path and mangled me and left me without help. He drew his bow and made me the target for his arrows. I became the laughingstock of all my people. So he's broken my teeth with gravel and has trampled me in the dust. I've been deprived of peace. So talk about, brutal language. That's a savage God right there.
Yeah. I mean, all of that also, it reminds me of another interpretation of God in C.S. Lewis's Narnia books. Jesus is depicted as Aslan, a lion. Someone says, well, he's not a tame lion. As in, like, you can't just assume that he's just always going to be there to help you out in a jam. You know, he's not a genie. You know, it's not one of those things where it's a calculation. You provide X and God provides Y in return. You know, and
transaction.
It does make me think of that, like the savage God idea is like whatever definition or box you try to put around God, whatever God is going to be insufficient.
Yeah. What about, the sweet toil? My lips are dumb to speak 1,000 inane words. I think, I'm evidence of that on this podcast, but,
Gosh.
yeah.
You have lots of good words, Ryan. Don't sell your short short.
Well, I'm a ruined soul bewailing, so I'm looking for some wings here to droop.
Yeah. To me, it feels like it's going back to that idea of like the savage God. Like I can't do a thing to make God kiss me except ask, and I can't do it eloquently. I can't do it correctly. I don't have the context to provide an adequate argument for why it is, valid. It's just, help, please. That's the essence of what it comes down to. And that sweet toil, going back to the previous song where, we're still holding on, that there's always this positive emotional valiance to the struggle that is being represented here. There's some word or phrase or, something that makes it seem like this is still a good and righteous thing to be doing, despite all the darkness that is accompanying the process.
Yeah, I think like in my own, sort of worldview, like suffering is necessary when it comes to personal growth, spiritual, expanded consciousness, just, the evolution of my own life is almost always accompanied by distress, sorrow, misery, all of which are packaged under the broad term of suffering. And this whole album, I mean, it gets darker and darker. It's like this descent that keeps going into the valley of the Grand Canyon, and it culminates with the cult of crucifixion. I mean, that's like, bordering on like a kind of psychosis or madness, and then it transitions out, and you start going up the valley with "Beloved, Our Wings Are Burning," and so it's just a huge letter V, and I think this song is the beginning of the descent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the ending part really made me think of like, I don't know, kind of the whole concept of destiny, which gets really fuzzy when you're talking about, I guess, Judeo-Christianity religion or any sense of religion. Like, I draw my thoughts from multiple paths and philosophies, so I don't have any definite thoughts on, destiny, but yeah, like the whole concept of like speaking all these words because you feel like you need to speak into something, into the air, whether that petitions God or the gods in some way, in your favor. I mean, then, that's its own thing to kind of flesh out, but whether, I like to think we have some agency and we're not just at the behest of someone else's plan, and we can't do anything, just deal with this dark phase. But it does make me think of those concepts, right? Like, how does that play out? How does my own actions affect if I'm going through a dark place, if I'm able to petition God to bring something positive out of a not positive situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, the whole concept of destiny, we could talk about that for like 15 podcasts. So I won't belabor the point, but
The whole concept of what?
destiny,
Oh,
fate,
destiny. Yeah.
how that relates to God. Does God have a plan? What does
Oh, yeah.
does it
Yeah,
change?
that's-
I mean, that's a whole theological hole in itself. But
This is a really tough song. I'll be honest. I think this is one of their most difficult songs to even talk about. I think it's incredibly subjective to each person how they experience the song, and I gotta say, like this one, I was a little worried or uncomfortable about having this one. It's just, to me, it's just too hard to convey through language, what how I experience it. What do you, I mean, do you guys share that? I can't think of another song of theirs that is difficult to talk about?
I think they're all incredibly difficult to talk about, which is why we shoot so many words at the problem and hope something sticks.
Yeah, I was gonna say they all have their interesting metaphors, and like Josh was talking about earlier, who's the protagonist, and like who is what character, and whether you're talking about yourself or someone else or the divine, like all of these things could be thought of as the same person. Again, if you're going back to talking about mystical thought and stuff, or it can be projected outward as different characters on a stage. So yeah, like every one of their songs can be some degree of complexity there, in the relation between man, divine, mortality, eternal life, redemption.
I will say there's one thing that I feel that I can add something of substance to, with as far as how this song hit me emotionally and how it affected my life personally. So when this album dropped, when was it? It was a time where I
Was it
really
2003?
needed. Okay. Yep, that's about right. So that was probably I was in the valley of the shadow of death in in this moment in my life. I don't need to get into the details, but it was very dark. What this song ends with: all is dark, all is blackened, all but an upturned face. And that last phrase is a posture. It is not a promise. It's not a set of instructions. It is a posture. And that hit me so hard, as far as like life will present you with never-ending waves of darkness, and how you address those. Getting back to the fate idea, Eric, it's like you can bewail, woe is me. You can petition. You can seek help. There's all these things, but ultimately, like that posture of, am I looking up or am I looking down? Hit me personally very hard. I created a sculpture based on these two words, and the overall like emotional journey of this song. I'll share pictures on the screen, but essentially it's a person who is in a whirlpool and they are reaching up, looking up. But I wanted very specifically the person who looks at the sculpture to not know, is this person being pulled into a vortex or are they like emerging out of it?
Dude,
I
that's
think
awesome.
that is the physical sculptural interpretation that for me like sums up Virgin Black. Yeah, I actually gave that sculpture to Seska when they were in Seattle a million years ago, whenever that was.
Wow, dude, I knew you did a Poet's Tears of Porcelain, that sculpture, and you mailed it to him, but I'd never heard of that one, the one you just described.
Well,
that's really cool
You'll
sounding.
see pictures when this podcast comes out.
Oh,
Check it
great.
out.
Yeah, it's awesome. You actually have sculptures that are inspired by Virgin Black that you can reference. So, in addition to all your other cool sculptures.
Josh, I love the posture. I mean, thank you for that. That is outstanding. I couldn't agree more. And yeah, that was a good takeaway I just took from you. So appreciate it.
Well, do we want to wrap it up there and move into a brand new segment that I just invented?
Sure.
Okay, so no other podcast has done this in history, so prepare yourself, audience. I thought it would be fun to have each of us recommend one piece of media that we think people who enjoy Virgin Black may also enjoy. So that could be a book, a movie, a song, another band, whatever. So I'll give mine first. It is a movie called The Fall. And it's the 1920s. There is a stuntman in Hollywood who falls and breaks his back, and he's in a hospital, and he wants to end it all. The only way he can see to end it all is to get access to pain meds and just OD. And he befriends a little girl who has a broken arm in the same wing of the hospital. And in order to manipulate her to steal the drugs for her, he starts to tell her this incredibly imaginative, colorful story. And the two narratives, the narrative he's trying to tell her is one of incredible darkness and bleakness, and then the real like narrative arc of it is the girl finding a way to wrestle that darkness out of the story and pull him out of his darkness. And it almost makes me cry just talking about it. It is so beautifully shot. It has so much heart. It's wonderful. It's from 2007. It stars Lee Pace. And yeah, there you go. That's my pitch for this movie. Please check it out.
I will. I'm
Nice.
watching it like tomorrow.
Yeah, I want to add that to my list. I was going to suggest, I was trying to think of like bands and stuff. I would go with the Contortionist, especially their album Clairvoyant, which I think has came out, I want to say like 6 years ago or so. It was closer to when I first moved to Colorado. But it's different musically from Virgin Black in a lot of ways, but it's also very harmonically dense, and songs that take you on a journey from different emotions. It's not just like one static thing. And I think it was either this album or coupled with their previous album before that. Both deal with the concept of like a friend that passed away, and kind of like shifting viewpoints of that whole process and what led up to that. And but given that it's not like a completely like bleak album or anything, but like there's just it deals with similar themes that kind of Virgin Black talks about, and how that relates to the divine and the universe. So
Awesome.
the Contortionist.
I will check them out. Thanks. Ryan?
Yeah, mine would be somebody I've met online through Twitter. It's their handle is charissagrace. We'll post it, Josh. But she writes poetry, and it's some amazing stuff. There's one that I linked in chat called "The Grinding Ache of Beauty." And what's awesome is, it's not super long, but she includes art with each, sort of stanza, and the art is unbelievable. I don't know how those are created. Like, it's fascinating because each picture so captures one of the images. So here's the profile. This is an amazing profile. I've never seen someone like it. Really captured me. Woman emerged from dark dirt, fruitful tree sprung up to salve hurt, purified and refined life, yielded vessel, yielded blessing. This person is just amazing. I encourage you to give him a follow, and you'll be blessed.
Sounds really cool.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. I'm glad I invented this new segment that no other podcast has ever done before. Great. So, let's just go ahead and wrap it there. I think while this podcast has taken much longer to get out than we would prefer, but one of the things that's been happening is like all of our lives are having topsy-turvy things from time to time, and we just think the priority is like having us all in a good enough headspace to talk coherently about this sort of thing, rather than like grinding to hit a date. So the next one will be whenever it is, and that's okay.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to do something from Pianissimo, the classical album. That'd be really cool.
I'd be down for that.
Sample one of those.
Sounds good. All right.
All right.
Well, we'll see y'all on the next one.